Hi YouTube, welcome back to another video from Wtf Rc Cars. So we've got the Xray XT2 two-wheel drive truggy, 1/10 scale, and let's have a quick look and see what we actually get in the box. I believe this is the 2022 dirt model. I am going to be racing it on carpet, but it's extremely slippy carpet, so I thought maybe the dirt model might be a bit better suited to really low grip. But let's get you in for a close-up look and see what we get in box. So as with most of the X-Rays, we get a lovely sticker pack, really nice colour instructions, and it's nice to see we get the actual window masks with it. We've got the adjustable height diff and the gearbox casing with the slipper clutch and everything. We've got a bag that's got a whole bunch of different shims in it. Looks like the hubs and some of the A-arms. We've got the bag of shock parts, nice aluminium shockers. It looks like you get all the O-rings and quite a few different dampers to choose from. We've got the high body post mounts with the little tops that rock, so it makes it easy getting your body shell on. Looks like we've got the plastic servo arm and a few body clips. Then we've got a bag with more arms. Looks like the front hubs. We've got the little bag of extra screws that you seem to get with X-Ray. We've got a whole bunch of bearings, sealed and non-sealed. We've got a set of springs, and it looks like these are they all marked gold with 4 dots? Hard to tell, but I can at least see some with 4 dots on. Then we've got the ball diff assembly, as this is the dirt model. They are a bit more work, these, but I kind of like them. I've been converting some of the Tamiya RCs we've got to them. We get some hoodie diff grease, we've got hoodie graphite grease, and then it looks like we've got 500 CST oil and a little tub of 650. Now in this one, unlike the, I believe it was the XT, or yeah, XT80, we didn't get a body shell, but we do actually get a body shell with this one, and it's got the little spoiler for the rear that we can cut out. It looks like this one's a bit marked up because it's been rubbing about on the tiny little chassis we've got. A lot smaller than what I'm used to with the 1/8 that I've built, but these really are tough. So nice lightweight but strong chassis. And then we look like we've got a few carbon parts in here for the chassis rails. And you do get the authentication certificate with it, which is nice. So let's chuck this all to one side. So the only thing you have to supply with this is the electronics, wheels and tyres, and everything else is in the box. So that's given us a quick look at what we've got. So I suppose the next thing to do is crack on with build of this one. Right, so starting at step 1, we're going to need this little thing, and then on this we're going to have sat one of the little washers that make up the thrust bearing, if you like. Then we're going to need graphite grease. This stuff gets everywhere. So we're then going to need to carefully place the bearings onto the grease, and this is going to be fun. Let's see if we can get these to stick to a screwdriver. So we get the tiny little bearings all sat around in the grease. I don't know if you can see that. Then we need to sit the other side washer on. To sit it all together. And I'm going to try and get a little bit of grease to go in between the bearings. Then once we've got it all together, we then need to get this to sit inside this part of the diff without any of the bearings coming out. And if you give it a quick spin round, you should be able to feel all the diff grease working its way around in there. Moving along, you've got this, and basically what you've got to do is sit one of these tiny bearings on, and then we need another bearing, and we're going to need some hoodie bearing grease for these, or bearing oil. And we get a second bearing, and you want to grease that too. Right, so moving along, once we've got us bearings on and oiled, we're going to want some diff grease on this outer edge. And then we've got us a little thrust washer, and then we want some more diff grease on the outer edge of that. And then onto here, you've got to make sure your square holes are faced up, and we're going to sit that in position. And then we're going to want to put us bearings into the little holes. And then we want diff grease on these. Then we're going to close it up with another washer, and we want grease around this again. Then we've got to drop this all the way through. And we've got a 2mm hex drive in there, and then inside here you want to insert the little spring. Then we're going to want the little tiny retaining mechanism, and then you're going to want a little thread lock on the end of this. And then basically we're just going to screw the diff together. And then as soon as it bites, you can feel it tightening up. We've just got the 2 outer bearings to put on it. So for setting the diff, it tells us to first fully tighten. So we fully tighten it down, and then it says back out 1/2 turn. So we'll do that. Let's see. It does feel nice and smooth. So then to set it up on vehicle, it tells you to first off set it like this, then put it in the vehicle with it built up, rotate the wheel twice with one wheel on floor, so it's spinning it round, hold the spur gear, and then fully tighten, and then back out 45 degrees, and then it's then set. But let's see what else we've got. So we need the 2 outer bearings, and I believe these are the ones we should be using, the sealed ones. So we need one of these for each side of the diff. Right, so moving on with stage 2, we need the diff case, and then we've got that bit that goes in there. We've got a bearing, and it does tell you to pop a little bit of grease, bearing oil on it. So we'll just do that, but it's a sealed bearing anyway. And then it says we insert that into the case, and you've got that pin in the middle. We've got the idler gear, and to this we fit a bearing in either side. And it just tells you to put a little bit of bearing oil on it, so we'll go ahead and do that. Then we've got to fit that together, and then it says we're using graphite grease on here. So the easiest way I've found of doing that with any of these RCs is to just spin the gears and just work the grease into the gears as they turn. And because graphite grease gets absolutely everywhere, it will pretty quickly work its way around the entire of your gears. And if you're unlucky enough to get any on it on your fingers, it'll work its way around every one of your fingers and every single thing you touch for the next 3 days. So that's well and truly covered. Then on to the next part. Right, it's telling us we need an outer bearing, so let's make sure we've got the right size. Looks like we have. So we want an outer bearing on there, and again it's asking for a little bit of bearing oil, so we'll put some on it, and then we should be able to close up the gearbox. Once that's closed up, we need 3 screws. Let's just check length of them. Yep. So you should have 3 that are longer and 2 that are shorter. And we want that hole, that one, and the bottom one. That's got us diff housing put together. Right, what else we got? You fit these with the dots at bottom, So 3 dots at bottom, highest, and then once you get down to middle you can flip it to be upside down. Let's just go with highest because we can always change it at a later date. So for these, so we're going to go with highest setting first because they should be fairly easy to switch. Then you want to drop that in, and then again it tells you need graphite grease on it, but we should have put plenty on before. So if we just spin it, should get us diff grease coating everything or most of it, and then we can just put a little bit on where it's needed and that'll work its way around. Then we get the diff housing. It says this should click. It feels like it clicked down pretty easy. And then we should have 2 of the shorter screws, and these go into the outside of the housing, so we get them screwed down. Basically like to build these just as the manual shows first, and then you've got a good starting point, something to base your changes from. And that does feel really smooth, and so does the diff. And we've got us 3 little dots towards the bottom. So moving along, it says we should have this cover and the motor plate, and it says we're going for the top 2 screws, and should be using these small button head for this side. I think there are options for graphite ones of these, if I'm not mistaken, for the motor plate. Although depending what motor you're running, might help dissipate a bit of heat having the metal one on. So we now need to switch this round, and then we're going to fix this on so that way round. So you're going to need the 3 little countersunk screws that you've got left. And you don't want to be over tightening any of these because they're quite fine thread and they're going into plastic. So once you've got that in place, it's time us to fit the slipper clutch assembly. So you want the back plate in place, then we want one at slipper clutch pads, then you want that with the gaps to the outside, the flat bit to the inside. Make sure it's all sat down together. Then we're going to have another friction plate, other than make sure it sits in the actual socket properly. Then we're going to need another plate. And then we're going to have to close the diff, or close the slipper clutch. Then we've got a spring, and we should have a little cap for the top of it. So it says the initial setting for this is flush with the end of the shaft, so we'll start with the stock setting. It just says flush, so that's what we've gone for. So we now have a really smooth slipper clutch assembly and really smooth diff. So let's see what it's got next for us. Right, so we need 4 of these little pills, and they're going to go into these, and we're just using again the stock setup calls for just the 0 degree position. So we'll pop them in. We've got a couple of the little 2mm spacers. So I'll just double check, make sure they are the 2mm ones. Yep, they're 2mm. So first off, we're going to need to fix this on. So if we get it in position, that's what we're going to be aiming for. Then we just need a tiny bit of thread lock. You can just get rid of any excess thread lock. Then we're going to flip it back over. Then we need to assemble his arms. So let's have a look which pins should be the longest ones. So it says one of them and a 2mm spacer. And we need the other one sat in there. And get his other arm on. And 2mm spacer again. Then we should be able to get that in position with his Xray logo facing away. Just show you to have them with them at the innermost, not on the outside. So we should be able to flick it over. I think they're the ones you're meant to use. Just get rid of any excess thread lock. So we've got his arms, and not too much play in them or anything. So moving on, it's now time as this is where we fasten his diff in. So it looks like that sits that way round, and then we flip it over, and we should have a whole bunch of these countersunk head screws. So I believe we're going to need 6 of them. Right, that is our motorman and diff. So next we're going to need a bunch of spacers. So we need them. We need his mount, and it's saying make note of the orientation. So you want, by the looks of it, that is the rear or the front, and this is the side we're going to be fastening things to. So we then need 2 of these. We're going to need 2 sets of them. So we need another one of the largest ones. Then we're going to need 4 of the really long screws. So there is 20s. So 1, 2, 3, that should make 4. So we're going to be screwing these in from the back. And then you want your smaller spacers on first. Then the larger ones. And then it looks like we just screw them in on them. So that's one. Now we need to get the other one on. These are going on with the larger diameter hole to the bottom. I believe that's the way it's telling us to do it. So larger one to the base. And if that's just a wing mount, that is like the world's most overkill wing mount. So once we've got that in place, we're then going to flick that around. It looks like this mounts up the top. Now the top 2 screws are 16mm long and the bottom 2 are 25. So the bottom 2 are going to be them really long ones. And then the top 2 should be those ones. So we now just need to get the really long ones in the bottom. And then we can tighten all the lot up. And I like to get them almost tight with electric driver, but then finish them off by hand, because it'd be so easy to strip these little threads. So we're going to want some weird looking little screws. Where are they hiding? Little flathead ones, so I'm guessing they're them. They are tiny. Then we're going to need some bearings, so that's going to be them. They look like the inner ones. It looks like the outer ones may be them. Right, so let's see what order we do everything in. Right, building the lovely drive shafts up where you get covered in grease. So we want that, one of them, and we're going to need a pin, and we're going to need some grease. So I believe they go in there, then we drop a pin through. That's got to go through and bearing's going to hold it. So we want to get some grease in there, and we're probably going to get covered in it. And then this is the fun part. So you line your pin up and then you get it through your bearings. Then we want that pin through. Then we want one of them, and then a tiny little pinch bolt. Let's see if I've got right Allen key out for these. I do have a tiny MIP driver for them, but well, I've got Allen key outside of me. So that's one. Right, we have 2 nice drive shafts made up. So moving on, what do we need now? I believe this is where we use these with the holes all the way through them. So what's it asking for initial setting? So we want the offset one, but to the inside on both. Which is going to push the hub up and out, if I'm looking at this right way around. That graphite grease gets everywhere, but it's all good. Good stuff, just very messy. Right, then we need 2 flat spacers for each one of these, and then 12mm screws. That would be all 4 of them. and one of them for each side. So we're gonna go 12mm spacer on each one of these. And then little chamfered part faces up. And we're just going to repeat that on this side. So that's got them. Right, now what's it telling us to fit? This part. So that's going to face inwards, and then two of the longest screws. And at this point you can fit the rear sway bar, which we have got, but I want to run it without it first, see what it's like, so I can tell any difference when I put it on. Right, so now we're making up the actual tie bars. Right, so there we have two built up to exactly 57mm, and then we just need to pop these ends in, which is also a horrible task. Right, so that's got them assembled. Well, the only way I can see this fitting right with the spacings is to use two of these real thin washers and one 2mm. And then that lines up perfect with no play. And then I think we're going to have to use these on the end of each one to hold the bar in. So the only way I've found to make these fit nice or seem to be correct is to get two of the really thinnest shims, put them together, then get that in place. One of these 2mm shim, in the back of it, and then it seems to fit perfect, no play at all. And then I'm just taking one of these washers and the tiny button head screw for either side. And that way we have nice movement and nothing getting stuck. Then we're going to need two of these shims, one up front, one up back, and it says initially go for the innermost holes. So we'll repeat that on the other side. And when you're putting these in, keep an eye on your drive shafts for them trying to escape as well. So we've not got a lot of play, but we've got a lot of free movement, which is good. So I think we'll leave it there for the time being, because it's nearly my tea time, and I think we've got a good bit of a start on it. Shouldn't take too many attempts or too many videos to build this. There's no four-wheel drive system or anything, but it's looking a nice sturdy little truggy. So let's wrap this one up. Right, so we've got the diff, slipper clutch assembly, diff housing, all the drive shafts and everything for the rear assembled. So there's a good bit of movement in them, nice and loose, but not much play. So shouldn't take many more attempts to get this finished, get it all built up. But thanks for watching Wtf Rc Cars. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, share to friends and family, and I'll catch you guys again in the next one.